Tonight on Reporting Scotland, anger amid the debate over calls for violence in the Middle East to stop.
It's my ruling, and I'm going to stand by the ruling, and I'm not taking any more pound towards Brendan O'Hara.
Politicians on all sides clash in the Commons as they decide on whether to back the SNP's call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. MPs are due to vote on it in the next half hour. We'll bring you the latest. Also on tonight's programme.
Well, we've got nothing to show for it now. Through all that hassle and heartache and everything.
Calls for an inquiry into the collapse of the Greenock law firm, which has left thousands out of pocket.
You've got to kind of deal with the cards you've been dealt with. You can't change them, but you can use them to play to your advantage.
And we'll hear the inspiring story of Nathan from South Lanarkshire, who's overcome adversity to become a successful swim coach. Hello, I'm Laura Miller. Welcome to Wednesday's programme. The ongoing conflict in Gaza and where politicians stand on the question of a ceasefire has dominated proceedings in the House of Commons today and provoked some angry scenes. All afternoon, MPs have been debating a motion tabled by the SNP calling for an immediate ceasefire. It comes after days of political back and forth on the issue, and the debate has led to more debate. There's been a strong reaction against the Speaker of the House, Lindsay Hoyle, with some accusing him of breaking parliamentary convention around what exactly MPs will vote on this evening. Our political correspondent, Georgia Roberts, was watching.
Queuing started early ahead of today's debate, with people keen to lobby their MPs on a ceasefire in Gaza. But what exactly is being voted on today? All three of Westminster's biggest parties want a ceasefire, but there's quibbling over the wording, because language really matters in this debate. The SNP began calling for an immediate ceasefire within weeks of the conflict.
I beg to move the SNP motion that's been tabled in my name and those of my right honourable friends, which calls for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza from all combatants.
But Labour, whose position has evolved, want an immediate humanitarian ceasefire.
That's what the international community uses, that's what the UN uses, that's what our five-hour partners used in their letter to call for one at the weekend, that's what the Munich Security Conference was using that Keir Starmer was at the weekend. So that's why we're using that language.
For the government, an immediate pause to create a sustainable ceasefire.
This is the best route to make progress towards a future for Gaza freed from rule by Hamas. Britain has set out the vital elements to turn a pause into a sustainable ceasefire.
To the outrage of the SNP and some Conservatives, in a highly unusual move for parliamentary convention, Speaker Lindsay Hoyle selected both Labour and the Conservatives' proposals for debate. It meant Keir Starmer was able to get a vote on his party's position, rather than risking the kind of party rebellion he faced last time the SNP put calls for an immediate ceasefire to a vote, putting Labour's divisions on show. The SNP denied this was ever about exposing Labour division in an election year.
If it wasn't for the SNP moving the debate today, then we wouldn't be in a position where Westminster is talking about the abhorrent situation that we see in Gaza. All we've sought to do is give a voice to the voiceless, and if I may, I think we're succeeding.
A series of votes are now underway. Georgia Roberts, reporting Scotland, Westminster.
Well, our Westminster correspondent David Porter is there tonight. David, and just within the last half hour or so, there have been more furious scenes. What's going on?
Yes, they have, Laura. What we are seeing in very sharp relief is the emotion surrounding this whole issue, both inside and outside the House of Commons. In that report, we saw people queuing up to personally lobby their MPs to try and get them to call for a ceasefire. In the Commons itself, there was a debate which was pretty serious, as you imagine, because of the issue, and really of quite a high-quality debate. But there is a row tonight breaking out about the Speaker's decision to allow a Labour amendment to be put to the SNP motion on the SNP's opposition day debate. That has infuriated both the SNP and the Tories. Some of them have even walked out of the House of Commons this evening. There have been calls for the Speaker to be brought to the House of Commons to give an explanation as to why he made the decision that he did. Sometimes in politics you get conflicted anger in the Commons, really for show. This is not one of those occasions. People are genuinely angry about what has happened because we have a situation whereby if the Labour amendment is approved, the SNP motion itself may not be taken. A few moments ago we had what is called a point of order in the House of Commons. The SNP leader here at Westminster, Stephen Flynn, stood up. He was clearly furious at events.
So can you please advise me, where on earth is the Speaker of the House of Commons? How do we bring him to that seat to explain, how do we bring him to this House now?
Of course, the events of today are only part of the wider discussion about what is going on in Gaza. MPs, whatever they do and do not decide tonight, have to realise that whatever calls there are for a ceasefire, and all parties want a ceasefire, that unless the Palestinians, unless Hamas and unless Israel want a stop in the fighting, there will not be a ceasefire. That is the blunt truth that MPs have to get to. But there is very real anger and emotion in everything surrounding this tonight.
OK, David at Westminster, thank you. Now, it's a question many of us might be asking, especially as we get older. How best do you manage your hard-earned money and protect your home? Some people use trusts. One legal firm which specialised in that was McClure, founded in Greenock, which went bust almost 3 years ago. It had tens of thousands of clients across Britain, and many are still dealing with the consequences. Some are having to pay thousands of pounds to have legal documents updated or fixed. Now there are calls for an inquiry into the circumstances around McClure's demise. Katie Hunter reports.
Information for previous clients of McClure.
In 2019, Agnes Henry wanted to update her will to leave money to charity, so she and her daughter contacted McClure solicitors.
I paid a fee.
They were advised to pay more than £3,000 to put Agnes's house in a trust. They say they didn't know she would no longer legally own the home. When McClure went bust, they realised what they signed up to and paid another solicitor £2,000 to close the trust.
I would like some of the money back anyway, but we'll not get it. But yeah, money back. Well, we've got nothing to show for it now. Through all that hassle and heartache and everything.
A family protection trust provides the solution.
McClure carried out work like wills and trusts. Trusts are a way of managing assets like money and property. Another company called Jones White took over its files after it went into administration. 2 public meetings about McClure's collapse have been held in Greenock by the local MSP. Stuart McMillan says there should be an inquiry in the longer term, but right now he wants advice for people affected.
They've already spent, in some cases, thousands of pounds for documentation that is faulty. They're now being asked to spend some additional money to try to get things fixed. That is patently unfair.
The firm's former managing director said, like many businesses, McClure was brought down by COVID. In a statement, Andrew Robertson said, "We strongly dispute any claims of criminality or fraud and stand by our position that the company traded legally, in good faith and in line with all professional guidelines and standards." He went on to say clients should not fear that money has been wasted. The trust was and remains a good service, and the fact that McClure no longer exists does not affect that. He said, "We dispute that clients were misled to pay for trusts." A debate about McClure's collapse is expected in the Scottish Parliament later this month. Katie Hunter reporting Scotland.
For the second time in a row, a test firing of a Trident missile from a Royal Navy submarine has failed. The unarmed weapon was fired from HMS Vanguard off the east coast of the United States last month, with both the UK Defence Secretary and the head of the Navy on board at the time. The Trident carrying submarines are based at Faslane on the Clyde. Well, our political correspondent David Henderson joins us now. David, what more do we know about this?
Well, this missile test took place back on January the 30th, and the plan was to launch it from the Trident submarine HMS Vanguard. It would then fly several thousand miles and come down in a distant part of the Atlantic Ocean. But reports say that actually what happened was that the rocket failed on launch and splashed back into the sea close to the launch site. Now, this is the second time in a row that such a test firing has failed. Of course, that's a problem because Trident is the UK's nuclear deterrent. It's a weapon of last resort. And the whole point is that it absolutely has to work. So there's been a sharp political reaction today from the SNP, who make no secret of their opposition to nuclear weapons. They want them removed from Faslane and from Scotland as a whole. They say this test marks an embarrassing failure of a weapons system that cost tens of billions of pounds, and they say it's proof that Westminster priorities are all wrong. Now, the Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, rejects that. He says the government remains absolutely confident that Trident is both effective and dependable, and he says they're still committed to investing in new submarines, new missiles and nuclear weapons into the future. OK, David, thank you. The Emma Caldwell trial has been told there's no evidence whatsoever directly linking her disappearance to the man accused of killing her. In its closing speech, the defence said it was easy to make Ian Packer a bogeyman, but it was ridiculous to suggest he'd got away with so many crimes for so long. Our Home Affairs correspondent David Cowan reports.
Emma Caldwell left this room inside a women's hostel on the 4th of April 2005 and went out onto the darkened streets of Glasgow. In the early hours of the next morning, her phone connected to a mast covering Glasgow Green, one of the areas where she worked. After that, she vanished. Today, Ronnie Ranucci KC told the jury there was nothing to link Ian Packer to her disappearance. Ronnie Ranucci said there was no evidence that Ian Packer had communicated with Emma Caldwell that night or on any other occasion. There was no evidence from CCTV or from his phone that he'd been in Glasgow city centre when she went missing. He told the jury Ian Packer wasn't there that night, he didn't pick up Emma Caldwell and he did not murder her. Emma's body was found a month later in woods where Ian Packer admitted taking her and other sex workers. Mr Ranucci asked the jury, if he had been responsible for the death of Emma Caldwell, is he really going to be so stupid as to dump her body there and leave it to be found? He said there was no DNA, no blood, no fibres, no hair, no fingerprints, no body fluids, nothing to link Ian Packer to Emma. As for the interview with BBC journalist Sam Poling, he pointed out that it had been instigated by Ian Packer. He said, why did he do that if he's got something to hide? Why attract more attention to yourself? Ian Packer faces 36 charges, including the murder of Emma Caldwell and sex attacks on 24 other women over 2 decades. Ronnie Ranucci said, it's easy to make Ian Packer the bogeyman in all of this. How on earth did he get away with it for all these years under the noses of the police? It's ridiculous, I would suggest. The truth is, it's not him. The judge is now giving legal directions to the jury. After 5 weeks, this trial is nearing its end. David Cowan reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
The number of people seeking help from an NHS gender identity clinic has increased to more than 5,000, BBC Scotland News has learned. That's a 5-fold increase since 2018, with some people waiting up to 6 years for their first appointment. GPs say the delay is putting both them and their patients in an impossible position while unable to access expert help. The Scottish Government says that waiting times for gender services are too long. New guidelines are due to be published in the spring. Our health correspondent Lisa Summers has more.
I can remember those feelings of not quite fitting in, but I was still fairly happy. I had a really nice experience growing up.
At the age of 27, Winter was referred to Glasgow's specialist gender clinic. She's one of over 3,000 adults waiting for a first appointment. She's already waited 2.5 years and has no idea how long it'll take to be seen.
The way that things are at the moment, it makes it very difficult for a lot of trans people to access any sort of care through the NHS. Even just for the early stages, if you're just questioning your gender identity, most GPs will just kind of take your initial feelings and then put a referral through. It's very hard for a lot of people to actually find an avenue to talk with someone professionally.
Faced with such a long wait for help on the NHS, Winter paid to see a private GP who prescribed hormones.
Transitioning, it's been one of the best experiences I've had. I feel like I haven't been quite so happy in a long time.
When the Scottish Government dropped its legal battle over gender recognition, it said that it would improve healthcare for trans people. Yet waiting times for adults and children at clinics like the Sandiford here in Glasgow are getting longer and longer. Balancing the role of specialists here with GPs working in the community was also due to be addressed in a new protocol ordered by Scotland's top doctor. But 2 years down the line and there's no sign of it, with doctors saying there's still a lack of clear rules on how to achieve the best healthcare for trans patients.
How are we doing for appointments today?
In the meantime, that leaves GPs as the only point of contact with the NHS for most trans patients.
I think it's brought a lot of frustration for us and our patients, and I think sometimes patients feel that we should be able to be doing something differently or more, but we have to be safe in our medical care. What we don't want to do is put in shortcuts and have GPs prescribing when we haven't looked at all the risks, when we haven't done a full assessment, because we wouldn't want that. That's reducing our standards of care, actually. So I think for a small number of GPs, it puts them in an impossible situation, but it also puts those patients in an impossible situation.
The government accepts waiting times are too long and says it expects to publish the new protocol in the spring. It says it's part of ongoing work to improve access to gender health care. But even when patients get into the system, they have to wait. Eli was first referred in 2018, but is now waiting for surgery.
That gap between GP services and gender healthcare specialists is more people that are sort of waiting, more people that are suffering stress, and it's all just to sort of feel more like ourselves.
Eli doesn't know how long he'll have to wait, but until he completes his transition, he feels his life is on hold. Lisa Summers reporting Scotland.
OK, to football now. And Livingston manager Davy Martindale says his side will keep swinging despite having to pick himself up from some dark moments at the foot of the Premiership this season. Saturday's victory against St Mirren brought the Lions their first league win since October. Livy are still 3 points adrift of 11th placed Ross County, who they travel to play in Dingwall on Saturday.
I'm fully resilient, I'm used to adversity, and probably half an hour later I'm sitting with my staff and we're going, right, let's go again. Like, we keep swinging. Whatever happens, we keep going. So no matter what the run of results are going forward, up until match day 38, we are here and we are fighting. We're going to try our best to keep this club in the Premier League.
A massive game ahead this weekend for both clubs indeed. OK, now as we edge closer to Saturday's Calcutta Cup clash at Murrayfield, Scotland's Kyle Stein says they face a big challenge against an England team who are finding their gears under head coach Steve Borthwick. Scotland have 1 win from 2 in this Six Nations Championship, while England, on the other hand, have won both their matches so far. Stein's back in the fold after having to withdraw from Gregor Townsend's squad on the morning of the France game because his wife had gone into labour, eventually giving birth to a baby daughter.
Yeah, all well, thank you. Granny arrived on Friday when my mum flew over from South Africa, so that's been a bit of magic, to be honest, to be able to catch up on some sleep. You know, coming off the back of the World Cup, you know, they've just made the semi-finals. You know, they seem to sort of be finding their gears, you know, under the new management. And they're a really good side with, you know, with a lot of threats. So it's a great challenge for us. You know, it's an amazing game to play at home. You know, I've never played Calcutta Cup at home, you know, so I can't wait for that, to be honest. But yeah, just a great challenge, one that we're all looking forward to.
Not a bad reason to miss a game of rugby, is it?
Yeah, I think he's allowed.
Yeah, we'll let him off.
Good on his wife letting him play this one, frankly.
Exactly. It'll be a big one. I'm sure Murrayfield will be absolutely rocking as well. But here's hoping we can make it 4 in a row.
Looking forward to that one. Yeah, and you want to stick around for this because we've got somebody now who encapsulates sporting spirits. Yes, thanks, Lewis, because 18-year-old Nathan McKechnie from South Lanarkshire is a swim coach. He also has autism and is partially sighted. Until recently, he was a competitive swimmer, but a shock medical diagnosis meant that his dream was not to be. Now he teaches and says he gets so much joy showing others how far you can go when you just keep swimming. Sarah McMullen went to meet him poolside.
Nathan found his love of swimming at a young age. After being diagnosed with autism and ADHD, he said being in the water brought him a peace he hadn't experienced before.
As soon as I get in the water, I just can forget about anything that's happened. It's just something I can do and just forget about all my troubles that day or anything. It's just, I found it like a second kind of home for me. That was like a wee 14, 15-year-old boy, and I was competing against like a 42-year-old, and I would gladly beat him. And he wasn't too happy with it, but it was a fun experience.
Having had his sights set on the top level of competitive swimming when he was suddenly diagnosed with a hole in his heart, it was difficult for him.
Keep going, Amy. I couldn't come to terms with it, to be honest. It was just like very much just distancing myself from swimming completely. One of my teachers in my school said there was a teaching opportunity for swimming, and as soon as I jumped right on top of it, as soon as he said so. The other centre I work at, they kind of just, like, they come back and they tell me, oh, I'm in swim club now. And then just to hear that really brings me joy. See your board, make sure it's straight, not up, okay?
With Nathan, it's a lot funner. Like, it's very free about his options, what you can do, and it's like have a great time.
Well, I used to go to swimming when I was younger, and then I quit because I didn't like it. But coming back here, Nathan's made me realise that it is a life skill and you need to be good at it to enjoy life.
He's been teaching us how to do butterfly because I'm really bad at it and I didn't know how to do it much.
Nathan might not be picking up as many gold medals as before, but he says he's still winning and he wants to show others with additional needs they're not a reason to hold you back, but a reason to keep going.
You've got to kind of deal with the cards you've been dealt with. You can't change them, but you can use them to play to your advantage. And I'm proof of it. I can stand here and say that it doesn't matter what you have, you can do anything you put your mind to.
Hear, hear. Good on you, Nathan. OK, let's get the weather with Chris. I frankly didn't see any of that today. That sun, that blue sky.
Well, it wasn't how we started the day with a lot of rain around, but it did improve. There were some sunny spells around and a few rainbows as well, Laura, but colder tomorrow. Thanks very much indeed. Very good evening to you. Yeah, it was an improving picture today, wasn't it? After all that wet weather this morning, some lovely blue skies eventually for many parts of the country. Here's how it played out. There's the satellite and radar. You can see the morning rain clearing through and then blustery showers moving in behind. And actually, as we head into this evening, further wet weather in the form of troughs. So showers sort of merge together to longer spells of rain, pushing their way eastwards. Still a brisk wind from the west-southwest and temperatures around 2 to 5 Celsius in town. Some of those showers wintry in the hills and mountains. Tomorrow will be a colder day. We've got cold air digging in from the west-northwest, bringing temperatures back down to where we would expect them to be for this point in February. But it will be a showery day and there'll be some sunshine around, still blustery winds with it too. So a bit of a mixed picture. Certainly through the mid-afternoon, showers most frequent through central and western areas, some sunshine in the east and northeast. Those showers will be of rain, perhaps some soft hail, anything wintry really across the hills and mountains down to around 300 to 400 metres. And it will be a colder day compared with today, so around 5 to 8 Celsius. Into tomorrow evening and tomorrow night, fairly frequent showers moving in across the country, and they're still with us on Friday. So Friday's a very similar day to tomorrow, with fairly frequent showers through central and western parts of the country, driest and brightest in the east and northeast, and again, cooler than of late. We've seen temperatures in double digits so far this week. Tomorrow and Friday, single digits, so colder. To the weekend, low pressure tracking away to the north, the isobars opening out, lighter winds, but actually predominantly dry both Saturday and Sunday. Here's Saturday, a few showers in the far north and northern Isles. Elsewhere, variable clouds, some sunshine, temperatures 7, 8 degrees. Saturday night, a widespread frost down to freezing, if not sub-zero. And then on Sunday, a bit of mist and fog at first, a few showers in the northern Isles, but for many, it's dry. That's the forecast for now. Laura.
OK, thank you, Chris. Now, before we go, since we have been on air, further chaotic scenes in a debate over a ceasefire in Gaza as the SNP and Tory MPs walk out of the House of Commons in a row over the handling of the process by the Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle. And you can keep across all the drama unfolding there in the Commons on the BBC News website. And Anne McAlpine will be here with your late news around 10:30 tonight. Until then, from everyone in the team, enjoy your evening. Good night.